Is it in here? I think so, yeah. Use computer. I think that's it. Text adventure, yeah. So we have letters to Santa. And then we have one from the boss. So, okay, I kind of do want to skim through them real quick. Go for the variety packs. A copy of all my commercials I did back on Earth. I know I'd kill it in outer space. Oh, this is still going? Okay. Recording equipment. Anyone else for the lifestyle things flow I can with arms and legs and stuff. Do not get it for them. They just want to put it in my bunk while I sleep. But item 4 is a must here. That's just not cool. Okay, Kinsey. Neural interface, research on the existence of alien technologies, nanotechnology. Yeah, she wants... If it's tech-based and comes from secret government research lab that even the president doesn't know about, then I want it. I know I can put it to better use than they've been since they couldn't bother to stop the Zin from invading. Oh, and one more thing, a new leather harness and swing for personal use. I knew it was gonna be something kinky, I knew it. Tactical layout, okay. No. If you're willing to throw a personal request in there, then I really like some earplugs to keep pierces singing out of my head while I try to concentrate on my training. Sid, to the one known as Santa. Okay. A wide variety of attachable tools. So I may sound like an individual. I wish. Fun Shawnee downloaded into my own memory matrix so I may have someone to talk to even if only in my mind. Extra strength lubricant. Christ. Pistols. Yeah, he just wants. And he wants hair gel. Okay. Ooh. That's cute. Shawnee, what do you want? In case you didn't know, she's stuck in a simulation, so you'll probably have to go there to deliver the presents or get Kinsey to program them in. Either way works, thanks. That's cute. This is probably something about Nightblade. Yeah, Nightblade. Cyprian Order. The Nightblade Swimsuit Limited Edition comic book. Oh god. Oh god. A Dakimakura. He wants a body pillow. That's funny. And one of everything Kinsey wants as well. Oh, that's cute. I think. Keith. Get me off the ship, seriously. I signed up for 4 years as vice president. This shit here is ridiculous. To the one known as Santa, why is there never any cocaine falling from the skies anymore? It's been about 19 or 18 years since the last White Christmas. This is true. You told me more about the holiday spirit than I've ever thought possible. Thank you. I'm new to this whole Christmas listing, so bear with me. Whatever Pierce wants, it'll make him happy. I'm good with that. Whatever Shawnee wants, I'm sure she has a reason, so probably worth letting her have it. Whatever Keith wants, he's probably worked it deserved, so that's good for him. Whatever Ben wants is probably stuff most of us would find boring, but if it makes him smile, then go for it. Oh, that's cute. I probably check to make sure it's safe first. He has some odd tastes. And for me, a pony. That's a standard first gift to ask for, right? I said fuck Santa before. I didn't mean it. Well, I didn't mean it at the time, but now I don't. Oh, that's cute. Alright, so do I actually have all of these? Do I? I do. Cool. When I was a child, Christmas was my favorite day of the year, but my family was always crazy busy with work and school. But when December 25th rolled around, it was all about family. What is this, Fast and the Furious? Just us, some music, snow on the ground, and a tree that reached the ceiling. It was magic. Continue. As I got older, the holiday became less and less special. My siblings went away, my parents broke up, but I always held Christmas in my heart. I believed in Santa, I needed Santa. Little did I know that Santa wasn't real. Are you crazy? Santa is true real. He had died. What? No way, Santa. He's an elf. He had been kidnapped. No one knew at first. The Christmas spirit was so strong that everything at the North Pole just kept going on as if nothing happened. Of course, the elves and Mrs. Claus knew that Santa was gone, but they also knew that the world must never know. The people of Earth learned Santa was in trouble, in true mortal peril. What would raise their spirits during dark times? What would Christmas mean anymore? And so it was that Santa's closest friend, an elf named Twinkle, took over Kringle's annual route, and no one was the wiser until a strange visitor arrived one day, I guess. The elves had toiled tirelessly without Santa for decades, constantly worrying about their beloved patriarch and eagerly awaiting some good news about the jolly old elf. So the arrival of a visitor piqued everybody's interest. This visitor, with his shimmering eyes and long white beard, would have been a dead ringer for Saint Nick in his early years, for all those dinners of milk and cookies led to his considerable paunch. But this was no merry elf, no, this was Santa's brother Terry. Terry Claus? Is that supposed to be some kind of pun? It was Krampus! I'm afraid Krampus and Santa stopped speaking centuries ago. No one knows the specifics, but Mrs. Claus bet it had to do with their semi-annual card game. Apparently, Nick is a bit of a sore loser when it comes to Texas Hold'em. So it was something else. Well, obviously, but really, that's as good as a description as any. The visitor was mangled and angry spirit who hated everything about holidays and cheer and snow and elves and reindeer and stockings and core synergistic initiative to streamline toy production without resulting in outsourcing domestic jobs to politically lopsided countries with a lax labor laws. He called himself Claus. We had no idea at the time that this dark monstrosity was ripped right from Santa's brain. That Saint Nick's captor, an alien overlord named Zinyak, was breaking Santa's mind piece by piece. Zinyak had taken everything good in Kringle, crumpled it up, spat on it, and dipped it in evil. The result was Claus, Santa's dark shadow. Zinyak had sent Claus to the North Pole by mistake to destroy the holidays. And he was successful. Christmas fell, the North Pole burned, and as joy drained from the season, the spirit of the world turned as to sackcloth. But that is a different story to be continued. That's almost an Eminem line, that whole sentence. Yeah, did you guys like me reading that? Right, so we have the rise of Claus. The assault on the North Pole was swift and brutal. The elves mounted a valiant resistance, but with no Santa to give them the holiday boost they needed, they knew they ultimately could not win. It didn't help matters that any that Santa's most trusted elf and the one who had taken over gift-giving duties in his absence had been persuaded to Claus's side. I am, of course, talking about Twinkle. If there's one bright spot to Santa's incarceration by Zinyak, is that the jolly old elf didn't have to see his best friend in the world turn against him in the holiday's darkest hour. Santa would have been shattered. I wish I could tell you that Claus had coerced, threatened, or bullied Twinkle into allying with the foul creature's plan. The truth was far pettier than that. Twinkle was simply tired of being the replacement Santa. The elf took to Claus's cause with gusto. It was a dark time. Worse still was that Twinkle knew Christmas's one true weakness. He knew the one thing that would irreparably turn the tide against Mrs. Claus and the elf resistance. The combo to Santa's safe? Oh, it's 1225. Nobody's surprised with that, right? The North Pole. The source of Santa's power and the most potent weapon in the elven arsenal, crafted by the shop's most talented elves and blessed by Father Christmas himself. The North Pole is a weapon capable of channeling holiday cheer into a blast of such high intensity it can level a large city in a mushroom cloud of concentrated happiness. It also smells faintly, like peppermint. But no one, not Mary, not Santa, not even Blitzen, on one of his drinking binges would dare unleash its power. If the North Pole fell into Twinkle's hands, into Claus's hands, then all will be lost. Claus unleashed a full-on assault. His army was unstoppable. The first to fall were the flying reindeer? You know, Dasher and Dancer and Prancer and Vixen? They were the first to die. Claus and his evil army put their heads on pikes and paraded them around the workshop. It wasn't long after that, as I would later learn, that Claus built his team of mechanical creatures, the Robo-Deer. It wasn't long before the elf resistance and all of Christmas was in shambles. Claus looked merry away on a remote ice floe and reclaimed the North Pole for his own, but he was unable to wield it because it relied on the power of giving, even if it was a WMD, but it didn't matter, for Claus was in charge now. The sky over the workshop darkened, and Twinkle, that traitor, became a slave driver. The only hope in the world had was a group of wacky teenagers. No, a renegade elf. Tinsel was his name. The lone elf managed to break off from the others and escape the ever-watching eye of Twinkle and Claus. Tinsel went to find help, to turn back time if necessary, in order to save the holidays, and he would find it, but not before the entire world got put on the naughty list. There's 6 more of these. Crikey. Why do I have so many messages on my phone? I don't look at it for 2 seconds. Jesus. Crikey. A Christmas Peril. Claus had taken over the workshop. He had the North Pole in his possession. Mrs. Claus was locked away. The reindeer were slain. Twinkle, the traitorous lout, was working the elves to the bone. It was the darkest time in Christmas history, and it was about to get darker. With only hours until Christmas, Claus and his minions didn't have long to ruin the holidays. But they didn't need much time. Claus's first stage in Operation Black Christmas was the production of dangerous toys. Long gone were the days of dollies and trains. Claus had his elves rebuild the machines used to create toys, so they now produced only weapons of war. An army of elves wasn't enough for him. He wanted more, bigger, meaner soldiers. He wanted to turn the world's children to his side. After all, everybody still thought Santa was in charge. News of Nick's imprisonment hadn't spread beyond the workshop, and that happened decades ago. The people of Earth were oblivious to Claus's regime and his evil intent. Claus was counting on them to do as Santa told them. If Santa gave them guns and knives and nuclear warheads to play with, who would turn it down? Good little boys and girls? Exactly, no one. And so the elves went about making their weapons and deadly toys, and into Claus's sack they went. As the hour of judgment loomed, the spirit around the workshop was dire. No one dared to speak up to oppose their taskmaster Twinkle or his boss, the vile Claus. Come midnight, Claus climbed into his sleigh and went about his annual route, his Robo-Deer braying in the cold winter's night. Claus set an arsenal onto the stockings and under the decorated trees of every household. Not everyone got presents, though. There were those Claus had put on the naughty list. Those people got something much worse. Eternal torment and pain. Even worse, those poor souls, unfortunate enough to be deemed naughty by Claus, were not simply denied presents or subjected to lashings. No. Claus had something much worse planned for them. On Christmas morning, those who had not made the nice list were seized by maniacal nutcrackers and whisked away to the workshop. They were to become the subject of Claus's grand experiment. He needed those of a naughty disposition to turn into his special soldiers. As it turns out, Mrs. Claus wasn't simply locked in a prison on that ice floe. She was being forced by Claus and his crew to create, well, the only word for them is abominations. She was making gingerbread men, not just ordinary gingerbread men made of sugar and flour. These were cookie soldiers bent on world domination, driven by an insatiable hunger for war. But the gingerbread men experiment was failing. They were lacking a special ingredient: human brains. Full frosted assault. Christmas had come, and with it, the reckoning of Claus. The good were given weapons, the not so good were kidnapped by sentient nutcrackers to be turned into malicious gingerbread men. Moms and dads around the globe attempted to take the guns and knives and grenade launchers from their children, but were met by meltdowns, temper tantrums, and the occasional rude gesture. How could Mommy and Daddy hate Santa? Why would they take his gifts away from them? Without an answer, the parents had no choice but to relent, but this was only the first phase of Claus's plan. The second was enacted on New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve 2013, a day which will live in infamy. A fleet of sleighs large enough to block out the sun descended from the northern tip of the earth like a black cloud. No one knew it was coming, and no one was prepared. Gingerbread men, crazed nutcrackers, elven turncoats morphed into giants by Claus's power, and a stampeding horde of robo-deer stormed across the land. Scared, defenseless, and more than a little confused, the people of Earth holed up in their homes, unsure of what to do. Little were they prepared for what happened next. For Claus's last punch in the sack was even more nefarious, more wicked. Claus's master stroke was Krampus. Son of a bitch. Krampus had nothing to do with this. An army of children. What no one knew was that those toys that Claus had given the young people of Earth on Christmas morning, the bayonets and flamethrowers and mine launches, emitted a high-pitched noise only perceivable by children that turned them into mindless zombies when triggered by Claus. By pressing a button on the head sleigh, Claus activated his army. The kids picked up their weapons and took their parents hostage. The grown-ups were forced into large, gaudily wrapped packages, tossed into a large pack, and hauled away to the workshop. The nutcrackers set about destroying all that was left behind, smashing cars and bikes, sending homes aflame. With the world burning and its citizens captured, Claus set about on the next phase of his plan. But what Claus didn't count on was a rogue elf. Tinsel, the elf who had thwarted Claus's forces and escaped the workshop, had made it to civilization just in time to tell a small ragtag group of regular people what Claus, Twinkle, and the rest of their minions had been plotting. Trekking southward from the pole was no mean feat, but Tinsel knew he must get the message out. He had to let the people of Earth know what was coming, and he knew, more than anything, that the best people to tell were the Saints. That's right, the Saints. Well, actually, just one saint. Me. A big fan of my reality dating show, I Want to Sleep with Shawnee, Tinsel was fixated on finding me, both to get an autograph and to help save the world. Not only had Tinsel managed to get away, and he brought something with him, a small pouch of Christmas magic. He didn't have enough to just wish Claus away, but he did have enough so that if enough people believed really hard, the magic dust might be able to free the people Claus had brainwashed. It was a long shot, but it was all we had. And of course, the first thing I did was smoke a bulb. No, I didn't smoke a bulb. Sleep with Tinsel. No, I did not sleep with Tinsel. Assemble the crew. Hey, I knew I could handle things on my own, but it never helps to have a backup. The first one I called was Johnny. First things first, I wanted more than an elf watching my back. Kinsey was next. Then she insisted on calling Keith David, but he was last seen on location playing himself in his own life story, and nobody had his number. Ben King had taken the money he'd made on that weirdo sci-fi book he wrote and was on some remote island somewhere. I suggested Matt Miller, but Kinsey shut it down. Apparently, she'd had enough of sharing the spotlight with him. Every second we weren't taking action was another movement Claus was ruining the planet. I made the call to only bring one more person. The boss. So wait, who is this? Who is doing this? I'm guessing this is Shondi? Yeah, this is Shondi writing this, right? Of course, they spent the first 20 minutes laughing in my face. They didn't even believe in Santa. They figured Claus was just some crazy alien who followed us home, gave kids a bunch of guns, and was now unleashing its armada at us, which, oddly enough, is actually a more plausible explanation. They were down for helping. Anytime shooting bad guys is part of the plan, the boss wasn't involved. But no way were they buying into Christmas magic or elves or any of that. I like to think they changed their minds once they met Tinsel. I believe the boss's exact words were, "Hey Shawnee, is that your little nephew?" So, no. But they didn't. Of course not. Have you met the boss? Look, I respect the hell out of them, and I'm loyal as a dog to them, but open-minded they are not. Once they get some idea in their head, they just... Yeah, I'm going off point. Anyway, we had our crew, and you know what? It felt good. Me, Kinsey, the boss, Johnny, lean and mean, oh, and Tinsel. Lean and mean, and really short. I mean, seriously short. He came up to my kneecap. I wasn't even going to think about wearing a skirt around this guy. Sorry, going off track again. We had the crew, we had some magic dust, we had an objective, take out Claus. How we were actually going to do that? Well, that wasn't entirely clear. True. That will be told in the next text adventure segment. Yes. That's funny. Operation Holiday Hustle. Claus was holding the world hostage. Tinsel had finally made his way to me with his sack of magic dust, which was only kinda disturbing. The crew, the important parts anyway, had been assembled. We knew we wanted to get all those people who had been brainwashed by Claus's twisted presence on our side, and Tinsel assured us the magic dust could do it. But of course there was a problem, which was... Claus found us first, I'm guessing. Nobody finds the Saints unless the Saints want to be found, except the Saints when people found us. Hitting enough people with it. According to Tinsel, you had to come into contact with the dust to be affected by it. We only had a little bit, meaning we couldn't waste a speck, and no good way of distributing it to a wide audience. Kinsey said she could produce more if she had the components, but Tinsel said that only Santa could bless the stuff. Without Santa, it was just dead skin cells and sawdust. Johnny suggested putting it into a sprayer and hosing people with it. Not a bad idea, but it was the boss who came up with the best plan. Putting it in the water supply. Yeah, we really didn't have that kind of time. God damn it. Gathering everyone at the Steelport Arena. How big do you think the Steelport Arena is? Crop dusting then, fuck you. Yep. It appears sometime during the presidency, Pierce had the great idea of hooking up an aerial application apparatus to Air Force One. From what the boss said, it was to be part of Pierce's attempts to paint the whole world purple. Our glorious communications director, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it turns out this harebrained scheme of Pierce was actually going to come in handy. Under the cover of darkness, we made our way to the hangar. We were quite surprised Claus hadn't set up defenses around any command centers or anything. Whether that was a product of his ego or just an oversight is hard to say. I think it's a plot hole. And prepared for our counter assaults. No. We had just gotten everything in order when we realized everyone was out of gas. Okay, true, it had been a gas, but we caught that early on, thankfully. Claus's forces attacked us. Tinsel, bless his little elfin heart, wasn't the sneakiest elf in the world. He had been trailed the entire way from the workshop to Washington, D.C. A spy following orders from that turncoat Twinkle reported back to Claus about our plan. As soon as the hangar doors opened, a fleet of sleighs, each one signaled by the screeching of its robo-deer, descended from the sky. They came at us, guns blazing. We took cover in the hangar and unloaded what we had. I have no idea how long the battle took, but it seemed to last for hours. Gingerbread men, nutcrackers, weirdly tall elves, and mechanized reindeer surrounded us. Our enemy was strong, but we were determined. After the smoke cleared, it was obvious we won. Claus won. God damn it. We were outgunned, outmanned, and had nowhere to run. I grabbed a rocket launcher, climbed aboard Air Force One, and started firing missile after missile at them. Twinkle, in his robo-deer-driven sleigh, swooped down and grabbed me. He dragged me up high into the sky. I remember the look he had. A twisted grin, a disgusting shimmer in his eye. "Happy New Year, girl," he said. Then let's just say when I landed on the dirt, I was short one arm. That bastard. I was losing blood fast and fading. The last thing I saw was Johnny climbing onto Twinkle's sleigh, and a scream he let out when the elf leveled my arm, still grasping onto that rocket launcher, right at Gat's face. Soon after, it was over. Air Force One was grounded, we were all taken hostage, and Christmas was forever ruined. Planet had fallen to an evil version of Santa and his no good army of twisted Christmas icons. All hope was lost. We had no choice but to surrender to Claus's will. The world was his now, or so he thought. Last-ditch effort. The Saints had lost. All hope was gone. The world had fallen under the rule of Claus, and not even us Saints could save the day. Johnny was gone for real now. I lost an arm, though Twinkle insisted on replacing it so that I was still useful. Years went by. The boss was locked away in Claus's office while the rest of us, including the other Saints with whom we'd been reunited, were put to work in the mines. Our job, day in, day out, was to collect metals from the earth. All we had to work with were a set of tiny hammers and some thimble-sized buckets. Why Twinkle and his men didn't make human-sized tools for us, I have no idea. Just another sign of their maliciousness, I suppose. We had attempted many uprisings, of course, but they were always thwarted by the watchful eyes of Claus. Surprisingly, we rarely saw Claus. Rumors bounded that he was busy working on some grander plan, some ultimate master phase, but no one knew for certain what that was. So it was the Taskmaster Twinkle. While Claus was rarely seen, Twinkle and his giant elves were omnipresent. Like starving hawks, they watched our every move. We couldn't wipe a bead of sweat from our brow without bringing down their wrath. That didn't stop us, though. We developed a code. Subtle gestures, inflections on certain words that helped us communicate with each other. With it, we were able to devise a plan right under their noses. The first phase of the operation was to lead a worker uprising. The more the merrier, right? In order to take out Claus for good, we needed to make sure Twinkle and his crew were distracted. It was Pierce who came up with the plan. I know, I was surprised too. It was Asha and Ben who put it into action. Kinsey faked an injury to draw the guard's attention. Ben struck from behind while Asha grabbed the giant elf's weapon. Sounds like unionizing at Amazon, it is. When other guards came running, I rallied the workers. By the time Twinkle and his posse showed up, we had taken the mine. The giant elves lay at our feet, and the workers stood by our side. We were ready for phase 2. Smoking the bulb. I'm gonna... take out the Robo-Deer. As it turns out, the Robo-Deer will be an integral part of our plan. Oh, so taking out Twinkle. Damn right. I was gonna get that son of a bitch for my arm, for Johnny, and for signing with Claus and helping start this whole mess in the first place. The workers took their tiny tools and acquired guns from the giant elves. Asha and Ben cleared out the others while I leaped on that bastard, Twinkle, like a jungle cat. I wasted no time pummeling Twinkle to a pulp. With my last punch, I drove my fist through his giant elf face and into the ground below. With Twinkle down, we stormed Claus's compound, seeing us energize the workers who had been on the assembly line. They took up arms alongside us. The Battle of Santa's Workshop was long and bloody. Sometime during the battle, I got my hands on a Crimson Cowboy, the best weapon in the Elven arsenal. We were just outside Claus's office when a Robo-Deer with a glowing nose charged me. I leveled my gun and squeezed the trigger. The bullet bounced off of the reindeer's metal hide and landed square in my eye. I went down, but I wasn't out. I rose again, and together we tore Robo-Rudolph apart. The path to Claus's office now clear. He threw open the door, ready to take that monster down once and for all, but the monster's room was empty. Claus was gone. All that was left was a note. Nice try, Saints. You did real well, but I'm afraid you're stuck in this living hell. One planet couldn't beat me, don't you see? Now the universe will fall just as easily. By the way, I've got your boss. I'd be lying to say I was sorry for your loss. Had all our fighting been for nothing? Ah, no way. We couldn't let Claus win. We couldn't let the entire universe fall under his regime. We had to stop Claus. But how? Zinniak's time machine. Claus had found Zinniak's time machine and hidden it in the back of his office. I had never been so happy to see a machine in my life. Kinsey would disagree. The machine was mangled though. Half of it was missing, using parts from the destroyed Robo-Rudolph, some of which were used to fix my eye, and a little elven ingenuity. Kinsey and Matt got the machine back in working order. We only had enough juice to send one of us back. Matt thought it should have been Asha. Ben suggested Kinsey, and it was Pierce who said it should be me. Johnny's lost the most of any of us, he said. Huh, maybe I'd been too hard on Pierce this whole time, I thought. Plus, if she doesn't come back, we still have everybody important. Or maybe not. Still, I agreed. I would make the trip back on my own. But when? How far back to go? I could have traveled back to and warned everybody about the Zin invasion, but I also knew I needed to be able to get back to my time. Also, if we had never been abducted, we wouldn't have gotten Johnny back. So I chose the day before Claus came to power. He would have defeated Zinniak already and had his time machine, but it wouldn't be too late to save Christmas. I set the course, stepped into the machine, and hit the button. And like that, I was gone. We had done it. Claus had been defeated. Santa had been saved. The boss even learned the true meaning of Christmas, but I couldn't stay. I had to get back to my own time. But not before taking a part in the most glorious montage the world has ever seen. After that, I said my goodbyes to everyone and stepped into the Zin time machine. I set the machine for the only date I could and pressed the button. In a flash, I disappeared from the past and materialized back into the present. I stepped out of the time machine to find myself inside a museum, sometime during the decades since we successfully saved Christmas. The Saints had apparently forgotten that I'd be coming through that damn thing and stashed it inside a history exhibit. Not that big of a deal, except for the fact Signac had the museum was closed for the holidays. Admittedly, not the most epic of the options, but yeah, the museum was closed for the holidays, which meant I couldn't get out unless I broke the glass with my cyber arm, which I did. The world outside was magnificent. Light of every color sparkled on the fronts of every building. Children and grown-ups alike were making snowmen on street corners. From storefronts, I could hear carols and hymns lifting onto the street. Christmas, and those other holidays too, had survived. I asked an orphan boy what day it was, and he told me it was Christmas Eve. There was still time. Still time! Okay, that last part didn't happen, but of course, I had to come back to the day before Christmas. I had to see it. I had to know, really know if we had one. The first place I went was the boss's place. Have you seen that place? Add a couple more decades of boss to that hole, and no thank you. Johnny's. Predictable, right? But look, after everything we'd been through, and after losing him again thanks to Twinkle, it was the first place I thought of. That would have been proof beyond proof that we really had changed the future. But when I went to his door, he didn't answer. I knocked it again, no answer. It wasn't until after I busted down his door, the cyber arm was pretty awesome, that I realized he wasn't there. No message, no nothing. Feeling saddened and a little bit lonely, I decided to then stop by Kinsey's? Yeah. We're like sisters, right? I figured if anyone would know where Johnny was or where anybody was, it would be Kinsey. I took a cab to her inner sanctum and knocked on that big ugly garage door. Again, there was no answer. I thought about ripping off its hinges. Could my cyber arm even do that? But nah, she was probably off being Kinsey somewhere, you know, Kinsey-ish. Or maybe she had moved. I realized then that it had been a long time and people move on. Oh, people move and hell, people die. Maybe there were no more saints, a sobering thought. Nowhere else to go, I went to the boss's place. Not fuck you. My place. I had bought the place outright with the cash I got from that game show, so I figured if any place had the best chance of still being around, it was my place. I grabbed a cab and headed home. I couldn't believe nobody was around, or that nobody was there to greet me. I mean, I told them that I was going to be going back to Christmas Eve 2035. So you think at least one of them could mark it on the calendar and maybe say, thanks Shawnee for warning us about Claus and helping turn the tide of human history, and also for saving Santa and Christmas and those other holidays too. But no, nothing for old one-eyed, one-armed Shawnee. After the cab left, I stood for a moment in the cold December air. It was dark out, not a hint of snow. I knew I should be happy just to be home, but I felt empty. Alone, sad. I was heading towards the door when I realized I didn't have my keys. Was I going to have to bust down my own door? Well, it turns out I didn't need to, because as soon as I got close, the door opened. Yeah. And there he was, Johnny, the big goofy grin on his face. And it wasn't just him, it was Kinsey, and Asha, and Matt, and Ben, and Pierce, and the boss. They hadn't forgotten. In fact, they all knew the one place I would eventually have to come back to. They welcomed me home with hugs and high fives and rounds of Merry Christmas. Kinsey was just telling us about how Santa had given everybody a special present as a thank you when I heard a strange yet familiar voice from the kitchen yell, "Is she here?" A strange vibe filled the room at that point. Everybody hushed except for Kinsey. "Oh," she said, I suppose I should have warned you." "It's alright, Kinsey," the voice in the kitchen said. "I'm sure she'll recognize me." And into the room walked me. Other me. Another me. No cyber arm. No robot eye. Short haircut. I always wondered what I'd look like with short hair. Kinsey did her best to explain. When we saved Christmas, we started an alternate timeline. This is the you that exists without Claus and Twinkle and all that happening. I admit, it was weird. Like, really weird. But okay, I mean, I was used to hanging out with other versions of me by that point. Hey, let's knock back some nog, what do you say? Typical Pierce, or at least some eggnog flavored Saints Flow. So we did, and we talked and laughed and shared stories while outside it started to snow. We gathered around the tree and sang carols until late. That night, after everybody had left and I was snuggled in my bed, I heard footsteps on my roof. And I knew it wasn't the Okay. It wasn't the name brand sneakers of gang thugs, or the webbed feet of some alien race, or the chomping metal repulsors of robo-deer, but the pitter-patter of hooves and the shiny boots of Saint Nick. Tomorrow morning, I'd wake up and see what present Santa had delivered me. Whatever it was, I already had the only present I could ever ask for. The best Christmas ever. So there's the Christmas episodes done. Jesus Christ. So we actually got all of the... We got all of the collectibles, which is good. What is this? What is this? Deliver a present to Zignac. So we need to do 2 missions again. I'm guessing.